In today's project, we built this portable battery box. Okay, so we got those holes all cut in. I just ground down the top, then filed over it to make sure it was flat. I had a second one of these to use just as a template. Yeah, so nothing too exciting. I went ahead and took out all the front panel pieces of this. Now we should just be able to slide this wiring harness down in there. And what we'll do is we'll use the locking nuts on the back side of this to also hold it. I mean, you technically don't even need these screws, but we're going to put them in anyway. So, one thing I don't like about this design is how close these are together, but I mean, I don't have any space to really work, so it is what it is. And we'll just the other one. Now obviously you could pick a different size enclosure, but the idea of this one was to be as small as possible. I already have the medium size and big size of box that Harbor Freight sells of these things, so I wanted a smaller pack for around the house and maybe day trips to stuff or whatever. Now there is one problem. I completely soldered these ends down here too close, but there should have been that way. So we're gonna have to fix that. That'll be fun. So probably just gonna do that off camera, to be honest, and we'll come back at you when I get ready to solder the 10 gauge on here, and we'll go from there. All right. So I got that fixed. It was not a lot of fun. You never want to make those mistakes when everything's installed like that. It's a real pain to get in there and fix it. But that being said, now we just need to make a cable that goes from there. And basically, it's just going to have to be a real short guy. Nothing too crazy long here. I'm thinking maybe this much. Alright, so just like before, we will put on our XT60 first. For some of you guys that work with these a lot probably already know this, but if not, I'll show you a little trick when doing the device side, this side. So a lot of times if you get these too hot, what happens is you'll melt that pin out. So if you just take a battery side and stick it in there first, it keeps the pin nice and straight and locked in. It also helps spread out the heat to their side of the connector so you don't melt them down. Find it has worked pretty well for me. Alright, I'm gonna move you guys here. Trying to do this as best as I can so you guys can see this, but it's just about impossible, I think, without some kind of clamp. I also find it easier to do one side first, get it just kind of tacked on there, and then come back and get it real good. You get something to hold it against that way. Alright, don't forget your end. So don't ever make the mistake of trying to push those things on there after you're done soldering. Ask me how I know. It's hot. But yeah, normally I put some heat shrink right here, and then I heat shrink it right to those copper bus bars. Looks good. But I said this gets a little tricky too, because if you get this bar too hot and that wire too hot, which it's hard not to because they're so big, you'll end up pulling it off. Yeah, I just have to, maybe you guys can see like this, and I can work around it. So I like to try to get the wire warm, good and warm, and then the bar. Have something ready to hold it down with. Alright, there we go. Plug this back in once again. Here's the fun part. Obviously, this will be wrapped and everything later and mounted, but until I get my BMS, I can't do that. So we're just gonna plug it in, something like that. Gotta guide the cables down. See how this works. It's gonna be tight. There we go. I have power. Everything seems to clear pretty well. Alright, well. Oh, okay. It's charging. I don't know if you can see that, but fast charging. So, yeah, it's working. And then if we hit the switch, no more charging. Turn it back on, charging. Plug it in there. That's really close. Right, there you go. So we could now charge another battery with this, or you know, whatever. Make sure the other one works. Yep, that one works fine. So for now, that pretty much wraps it up until we get our balance cable that we still have to put in right here, and we get the BMS. We'll get that mounted down probably in this little cavity here. Then we'll heat shrink the battery and figure out probably a Velcro strap, or maybe I'll 3D print something that just holds it down there, and we'll figure that out. But until next time, thanks for stopping in, guys. If you liked the video, please give me a like. I know this was a long one, and if you like what you see here, give us a subscribe. Thanks for watching. So, look what showed up in the mail. Got the BMS. And here's that screen I was talking about. So this will actually show pack voltage, the amp draw. It'll show individual cells. And I want to say this one's programmable. I don't know. We'll have to test that out. Might do a video just on the BMS itself. For now, you don't know, this is a BMS battery management system. It essentially monitors each one of the cells and makes sure they're not too different, and it also does balancing to keep them all the same. So they wire up. They have a pack minus, which goes out to your XT60 plug or whatever plug you're using, and the B minus is the battery. So P for pack, the whole thing, B for battery as it goes onto your battery, and that's for your ground lead. What that allows it to do is disconnect the power if there's a problem. So if it sees like an overcharge or a short circuit or a cell going bad, it'll disconnect the load. This also has a temperature sensor, so I think it does low temperature cutoff, so you don't charge them when it's too cold and ruin the battery. And I believe, obviously, it'll do the other way. If it's too hot, it'll shut down too. So this is the balance lead. And how this works is, we got the colors here. You got a black, and then for a 4S, you have 4 other wires. So most negative, next positive, next positive, next positive, next positive, or most positive. That's what I will. They're soldered these tabs on here for. So in our case, this cell right here, which is our negatives coming off of, that's going to have to come off, and that is our most negative side of the battery. And the other side of this cell will be our first positive. So just make sure you keep them in order. But I am going to wire a separate wire on here for another balance lead, so I can look at it myself in that little port at the top of the box. This guy. We can plug the cell monitor in there and also look externally if you wanted to, or you could use the RC charger and you plug the balance lead in to balance the battery. We got our most negative on. We're going to flip the pack around and making sure we're keeping these straight. So this is cell 1. And cell 2. So our next positive, which is the center one. Back on the other side, cell 3, which is this guy over here. And our last one will be our most positive, cell 4. Alright, so now we need to figure out how we want to mount this. And I think most of my batteries I build, I usually just stick them on like that. So I don't think we're going to do anything different with this one. A little double-sided tape. I also did wipe this down with a bit of alcohol too, just to get any oil off of it before I put this on here. So I think I want to actually peel this back so we just on the plastic. Okay. So what I meant by that. So I need this blue wire here to come up and grab that. So let's go ahead and solder this. Just like that. Like I said, battery minus to your most negative. I don't know if I want to extend that guy or not. Yeah, I think I'm going to. Let's just... I always feel like those leads are so short. I'm going to extend that, and I was looking for how I'm going to do it. I think I'm just going to use one of these heat shrink butt connectors. Generally I would solder these together, but since I don't have any big heat shrink right now, this will do. Well, it's on there now. Alright, I'm done with those. I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried to shove together fine strand wire like this, but it's an absolutely pain. Hopefully this big shrink that I have will shrink down that small. Looks like we're in luck. To grab a voltmeter and just double check. So let me check these and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So starting from the ground, shut 13 volts at the end. Yep, 9, 6, and then 3.2 because it's nominal. So let's test again. Cell number 1, 2, 3, 4, or excuse me, 3, and then this is 4. This is full pack. So we know our voltages are good. Goes up by roughly 3.2 volts each time, and only then do you plug this in. Do not plug your BMS in until you know 100% sure that your pack is correct. Something like that. Alright, and then we'll just tape our sense, probably route our sense wire back here. Tape it in with one of the cells. There we go. Good enough. And this is for our screen, so let's see, moment of truth, see if this works. Alright, so messed around with this a while and I got it working in English. So I found out that you have to initiate a charge to activate the BMS, which is unusual, so it's something new with the new smart Dalys. And then once I had that, I found out it was in Chinese. So I spent all last night looking around trying to figure out how to change this thing. Found out it was a flash file, the one I had didn't work. End up posting on Jehu's Powerwall Facebook, and somebody else had it, and their Daly came with a firmware already. So he sent it to me. I was able to flash it and get it in English, thankfully. Now the next thing to note with this is this screen turns off at a random amount of time when there's no load being drawn or it's not being charged. So when it's idle, it'll eventually turn off. And then if you charge it, the screen will turn back on. And if you pull a load from it, the screen will turn back on. I still have some more playing around with to do on this. This will probably be a video in itself. So for now, I'm just going to unplug it. I got the pack kind of tidied up a little bit. I put my other connector on there so I can balance it. And yeah. So I think all it's really left to do is heat shrink it. I'm going to put some rubber on top of this. Not really necessarily. They also make what they call fish paper that you can do. And that's like a double-sided adhesive, and it's actually made just for batteries. But I got one for each side. It'll just help keeping the anything poking through the top or something were to get punctured or anything like that from it shorting out. Alright, so I think I got that how I want it. I'm just gonna kind of hold all my cables together here. Grab the heat gun and we'll shrink this down. I also went ahead and cut the hole out in the box. I still need to solder on my connector to the end of these balance leads, but I will do that later on. Go ahead and plug our pack back in. Mount our screen. If anybody's wondering, they have these little clips and they grab onto those holes. Okay. And for now, I said eventually this will have a plug on it and I'll be able to plug that in. Just gotta make that up. Plugs in there. And I think for a strap, I'm gonna end up cutting a hole, like a slot in the bottom on each side, and use a big Velcro strap. Generally, I would have a piece of wood underneath, and then I wouldn't cut a hole in the bottom. But since I literally have like no space between this pack and the top, I don't really have many other options. So I probably will actually go this way. Keep it from sliding back and forth. I mean, it really can't, and then it can't come up either, but not that it really can. So go ahead and make sure our wires don't get stuck. Nope. Sure our wires don't get stuck. Close down. So let's see how well you guys can see this. Now you can prop it up with something. So let's just do an unbalanced charge real quick. And you'll see like the different screen settings. All right. So I set the charger for 20 amps. I'm trying to see if you can see it through the GoPro, but maybe if I turn off this light. Yep, so you can see the charge current is 20 amps. Tells your little battery and all your stats. You can also see individual cells, which is probably one of my favorite parts. And somehow you can change these settings. You can hit the set, but I haven't been able to get mine to stay, so I don't. The last version in Chinese had a password that I entered to change those, and this one doesn't, so I still have to do research on that. But like I said, I'm probably gonna do a whole video on all that stuff, see if I can get all that figured out, and then do a whole other video on this BMS itself for any of you guys looking for that information. But I think that'll wrap this one up, guys. I appreciate you hanging around if you did this long. If you liked what you see, consider subscribing. Thank you.